Today we're talking about how to be an inclusive brand, but also how to target specific segments.
With so many different platforms,
Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter,
and their purposes evolving daily, navigating social media can be, well, complicated. Welcome to the Social Media Sucks podcast from Cupco.
Social media really sucks.
Where we unpack the latest trends and help remove the suck from social media.
Welcome to the Social Media Sucks podcast by Cupco. If you ever experience the fear of missing out when it comes to social media and marketing trends, then this is definitely the podcast for you. We will help you level up your marketing and business skills by covering the latest news within social media and through our inspiring guests. But before we start, if you're not already subscribing to our podcast or YouTube channels, please do so now, because it really helps us get all this amazing inspiration and education out there to even more marketers and business people just like yourself. Let's get into today's episode. With me today is Shirley, the Nordic Digital Media Manager from L'Oréal. And as always, our beloved and summary, Chris Coverness.
I am summary today.
Yeah, from Cupco.
Yes, because I was on vacation and I came back just for this podcast.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, very important. So today we're covering how you can be an inclusive brand, but yet market to very specific segments. Let's get into it.
Cool. Thanks for having us. Or actually, wait a second.
Wait a second.
I feel like, okay, this intro was
Wait
so
a
professional
second.
that it
was
got
so
you.
good.
I feel like it got you,
It was
right?
actually the best time you've ever done it. It screwed me up. That's how good it was. Thanks for having us. It's so great to be here. Finally.
Yeah, finally.
I've been following the podcast for a while now, and I'm really glad that I'm here.
Yeah, we have a good reputation out there.
Yeah.
The podcast is really scaling up, I would say. Yeah,
So
I heard a
it's-
lot of good people and,
Yeah, so
C-level
I'm really
management
glad
talk
that
about
I
it.
finally got invited, and now I'm here.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for having me today.
Of course.
You're super
Can
welcome.
can you please tell us a little bit more about your work and your experience at L'Oréal? Just a little bit about yourself and your career.
Of course, as you already know, I work for L'Oréal, and I've been working there 5 years. But let me maybe just start with a fun fact about me. Is that
Lovely.
I think my whole SoMe journey started with me having an Insta-famous cat. So
Okay.
I actually
Okay.
had a cat named Exotic Herman. He reached 25,000 followers, so in
Okay.
a really short amount of time, and he was even mentioned in Good Morning America. I think also in some show in the UK that wanted to fly him in. So yeah,
That's
it's just like
amazing.
Okay.
So L'Oréal, and I love cats.
That's
So
great.
That's
what kind of
awesome.
cat is he?
he's exotic actually. That's why
What is
Exotic
that?
Herman.
Okay.
So that's like a short-haired Persian.
Oh,
Yeah.
is that those? Oh, it has hair though.
Yeah, it has
Okay,
hair.
okay, so
hair,
it's not a
but
hairless
it's
one.
just like a short-haired Persian. So
Okay.
kind of like flat face, but he unfortunately passed away. But I
sorry to
think
hear
for
that.
me it was like I started with saying like I had a passion or have still a passion for social media, and I wanted to create an account with 10,000 followers. I didn't care how, but it shouldn't be about me. So
okay.
and then I was like looking at my cat one day. I was like,
This is gonna work.
You can be Insta famous.
and so like one thing led to another, and then suddenly he had like this agency behind him, like Barcraft Media, I think.
Okay.
And then like starting to selling his pictures on like different what is it called? It's called where you can like buy these stock images.
iStock or Kitty
No, like,
image or
yeah, some of those actually.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you can buy his pictures this day today. So
that's
Crazy.
go and support. No, I'm
Okay.
kidding.
Yeah. No,
But yeah.
go
Yeah,
to the
did he
Instagram
do
account.
anything, or is it just
No,
like
he just
purely satisfying pictures?
Yeah, he just looked funny, and I think I just have a passion for both like pictures and like animals. So it's just like
Yeah.
patience, but
Okay.
but yeah, just very special looking and yeah.
So that's how you got into SoMe.
So,
You're
yeah.
like,
Yeah, I
You
think
wanna
already
try
I
this
had
out.
like a passion before, but that was just
Yeah.
like something I just wanted to see like how do you reach 10,000 followers? What should you do?
but that's
Yeah.
really cool because
Yeah.
a lot of people don't have like practical hands-on,
Knowledge.
experience with how do you
Yeah.
actually grow a social.
And I think that gave me like a lot also from like a work perspective. And now I've been working with L'Oréal for 5 years, and today I'm responsible for all our paid media, but also all organic accounts.
Okay,
So
that's a lot of
yes,
content.
because I actually work for both Kiehl's and Cosmetics and Urban Decay in the Nordics. But luckily, we only have like one Nordic account to each, and also on Facebook. So
That's great.
Yeah. How did you get to career-wise? How did you get to your position at L'Oreal?
I think just before L'Oreal, I actually worked like 200 meters across like the street from L'Oreal at Ella. So I worked there as a digital media assistant, and there I actually also work with social on growing their social channels and also content also for the fashion magazine named Mode Magazine in the fashion magazine in. And also work a lot on the actual like homepage stuff like content and so on, but especially like in main responsible for the social media account.
Okay.
And then I did my master's, and while I was doing my master's, I applied for a graduateship in L'Oreal, and then whoopsie, I was there.
Nice. 5 years.
So,
5
yeah.
years in.
Precisely.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So let's dive a little bit into being a socially responsible brand that L'Oreal is. A lot of beauty brands are turning into more and more, obviously. So what does it mean to be an inclusive brand when you're standing from a L'Oreal perspective?
I think for L'Oreal, it's like also being such a big beauty company that it's really important for us to like to be, you know, like be the first movers or be the ones that, you know, people look up to and say like they're actually doing it right. And I think also one thing is like saying it, or doing it for a specific amount of time. Another thing is like doing it continuously, doing it every day, doing it with everything you do and what you stand for. And when you come in to the office, like knowing that like this is what, you know, the brand represents. And I think that is important. So like in short, like that you see it in all like processes, steps, full 360.
Yeah. Does that mean like products, or is it in your communication that you apply this, or is it in
I think this is
advertising?
everything. This is everything from like who works there, who sits in the office, to the specific product that we're securing. That like, of course, we have this product that it's reaching a specific segment or targeting. But again, maybe we should have several products that segments to different target groups. So I think yeah. So it's like it's from everything we do, and also from who we target, but also from the products we create.
Okay.
Do you see consumers actually like
Respond to
that? Yeah, like
Yes,
they really
I do
want
think they feel
inclusive brands
seen, and I think sometimes working with beauty, some might say that like, you know, are you actually making the world better? And I think you need to maybe look at it from another perspective that like, but what can you do within your field or your area and do the best you can do there? And I think I was surprised like because I work only on American brands, but I was surprised when I got a text or like a tick in the inbox where a person actually wrote like, wow, this product changed my life. Okay, and I was like, I thought people made that up, you know, when they said that in commercials, but they were like, yeah, so I've had bad skin for like several years, and this actually, you know, doesn't make it worse, and it actually covers what it needs to cover. And I was like, wow, thank you. So like, maybe we are actually doing something right,
making a difference.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Makes sense.
What do you see as the biggest challenge then when you try to position yourself as an inclusive brand?
I think also being an inclusive brand, like there's two branches to it. One thing is that of course we need to sell. Like yes, we want to make the world a really great place, but of course we also need to sell products. So like what is important then in the process of selling these products is that are we selling by being inclusive, or some actually buying our products because we are inclusive, or should we target even more into these segments and then maybe not always being inclusive? And I think that's something that can be difficult to balance, but I think at least from my own perspective is that it's both. Like of course there will be specific products that only works for some people, and that should still be okay, but then you have other products where maybe another target group could be present. So So I think, maybe, I don't know, did I answer your question?
Yeah, but I think what you're leading to is like, it's a sort of dichotomy that we're in right now, is that, especially within paid media, that you have this ability to say, I want to target these specific groups and like, I'll build the content towards that specific group. But then you also run the risk of not being inclusive because you have this very specific audience that you're going after and you want to represent them in the content and represent them in the strategy, but then it is very targeted, right?
Precisely.
So then you have to find, I think what you're just talking about is finding that balance, because, and I think what we've seen working really well within that is showing shade range, showing more, not just about that specific person, but really unpacking the content to show many different types of people and many different skin types and different, backgrounds, and try to be that, but not try to be the United Colors of Benetton. Like, we don't want to have like, every single person represented from every part of, culture and society. You have to sort of pick and choose, but at the same time have enough that it sort of represents enough people, right? So
precisely,
and that's the tough part. I think a lot of brands are struggling with that right now.
I completely agree. And also, like, looking at that specific product, like, is that actually supposed to be for everyone? Or is it
just
for instance,
person,
anti-aging? Like, maybe there should actually be an age limit there. But I completely agree that is, like, so difficult to navigate in sometimes.
Yeah. And I also think that you guys have a difficulty or at least a challenge in that, your industry in itself is a little bit of in a contradiction with itself, because we're seeing a trend towards authenticity and a trend towards almost like, not anti-beauty, but it's like you guys are selling a product to make people feel and seem more beautiful. But at the same time, we're seeing specifically in social that, we want to see the pimples on people. We want to see the hairy arms, pits. Like there's this sort of like swing here that's happening. And as a beauty brand, you guys have like a sort of a hard challenge in figuring out, okay, where is that line between being a beauty brand and being a real authentic brand, and how do you do this so that it doesn't seem like you're contributing to a an unattainable image, right? So I think that's also a challenge, right?
It is. And I think it is easier working for instance, as I work for American brands, because we are actually like really, really diverse in all the material we do. And you will see, for instance, on cosmetics that like it's not like often the material like used in advertising are the people working in the office. Even like the global material that we use or people working in the office, not models. We do not Photoshop. And a lot of the campaigns are also based on like real women. And it's so like, you shouldn't be saying real women, because what is a real woman? Like everyone is real, of course, but what I mean is like maybe the regular woman that you wouldn't usually be seeing in advertising. We did this campaign where we were looking for I think firstly it was only like 4 Nordic women to be part of this campaign who dealt with different skin issues. I think we ended up choosing 6 or 7 because they were just amazing. And these we used like fully across like the Nordics for a full-blown paid media campaign. We even used it together with our clients, retailers, and also we used it for our own channels. And these were not Photoshop. Like the most we did was some lighting adjustments, and that was it. And I think that was really, really cool. And also the feedback we got, people could actually see that we were not just saying we are authentic. Like you could really see that this was not like a full-blown like big Hollywood photo shoot campaign. This was just like women taking in and like them actually just telling us what they think about the product and using them and showing the results. And I think that was amazing.
Yeah, I love this. I think this trend of no Photoshop is going, the right direction. And I think also you see in Norway, for example, they're basically saying like, if you're using filters on advertising or Photoshop, you have to tell the people that you're Photoshopping this. And I think that's a good change. I think like in terms of pushing society in a direction where there's no false advertising, or there's no, there's no unattainable beauty standards that obviously affect, younger kids and things like that. So I think that's good. And I think it's brave that you guys did it. I think it's also challenging for beauty brands to actually take that step and live by that step, because it is like, oh, but man, we'd like to, fix this one blemish, or like we want to do this, and you can't. Like, it's literally like, no, like
Precisely.
it has to go out this way, and it's tough for brands to take that challenge, or take that up. And I think that's really cool that you guys have done that. So
Do you do that for your inclusive campaigns for all the different brands? Is there any sub brands within L'Oreal that you like, but this is a really specific thing, we only target this, or does it have other kind of directions,
Like,
a different vision than the main one?
I think like looking at L'Oreal, like you need to like consider that it's a very big company with several brands.
Exactly.
So for instance, my brand might be really different from, or my brand, the brand I'm working on.
Your brand. I like the ownership. I think it's good that you're like, this is my brand.
Yeah, but I actually also like we're part of like launching cosmetics in the Nordic, so it is like my baby. So that's why I'm like my brands or my brand. But yeah, so L'Oreal is a very big company, and with different brands. So I can't say that like necessarily that what we do on these brands I'm working on is the same as they're doing on other brands. But I know that L'Oreal in its full is looking at like and taking like both equality, diversity, transparency, very, very like seriously, and also the environment as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's something maybe like people sometimes forget, and maybe I'm also like a bit biased, but as it leads to what I said before, that I think it's important that whatever you work with, that you do your best within that field, and then hopefully like the consumer also agrees on that
and since it or takes it in.
What would you like to do better?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think? You said like doing your best. I love that sentiment. What in your head is like, I wish we would do this better? What would that be? Without breaking any NDA laws? Or...
Yeah, but that's like a really tough question, Chris. Like I there's a lot of things we can always do better.
Yeah.
So that's like very difficult. Like in all aspects,
it's too ambiguous. Just one thing, like one channel or one activity that you're like, I
want to optimize this.
Like a lot of clients will give you some inspiration. A lot of clients would love to do better in community management. A lot of like they just don't have enough resources. They're like, oh man.
Precisely, and maybe that's I actually agree on that, but I do still think there's a lot of things we can do even like better. We can create packaging that are even like less or like even or even more sustainable. So I'm thinking in that sense, like yes, there's so many things we can do better, but in terms of specific like area, I do think that like community management is so important, and it leads back to like the resource question, like and a lot of companies like they want to, but they also don't know what it takes actually like to be managing these accounts, because you're on 24/7. People today, they want an answer within 5 minutes, like you cannot or less. And when you for instance do paid campaigns, it's set up differently. And it's like a lot of people are actually like, it could be 1 million people who might have seen that comment. So
it's actually quite large. It's almost like a piece of media in itself.
Precisely,
right?
it is.
That comment, somebody's
and that
comment.
can live by itself. Like, and if you ask the right questions, then you engage and people follow up, and suddenly you have like this conversation going on.
I think it's a missing puzzle piece. Like I talk about it all the time, that I think like so many brands, specifically in the Nordics, I think like in the US we've seen brands be a little bit more on top of it and have already sort of bought in. But in the Nordics, I feel like if Nordic people are listening, Nordic brands listen in, I think that there's still a lot of like, forget it. Like there's, they'll go away, or we'll just ignore this. But I do think it is a medium, and it is like a thing where you can actually make a massive difference if you say the right thing, or you do.
I completely agree. And I think also like the Nordic people, I really see, or more or less like the most critical ones, like critical consumers, like they ask all the tough questions. They're really challenging, and they don't believe everything they see. And we also see that on the feedback or the conversations we're having, like you know, where they're really asking like these like harsh, does this product like even work, like, or
some people do the research before.
Precisely. And I think like for creating like authenticity or authenticity, sorry.
Yeah, authentic.
Yeah.
Authenticity?
Yeah, authenticity.
Yes.
Yes. And I think
it.
for that purpose, I think that is so crucial.
Yeah.
And also like it's more or less also word of mouth. Like it's
It's word of, we call it word of mouse.
Yeah, word of mouth.
I know,
Wow.
sorry.
It's but no, I get it, but it is a placement that a lot of companies, brands are not using, because they're like, if the product is good enough and lives for itself, then it should be fine. But
it
it's
is
a
an
space where
opportunity
you can
to talk to your
word
customers.
of
It's a
and-
lost
mouth.
opportunity.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
that
you're right,
term.
and like also like consumers today are super smart. Like they'll ask,
Yeah.
like we've been working in beauty for a long time and seeing comments like, you know, how much niamicid is in this, or how much like this product, how much this chemical. It's like, what is going on here? Are you a chemist? Like what?
But it's so true.
Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
really becoming nerdy when it comes to
Yeah.
especially skincare.
Yeah, definitely. It's a huge
Skincare,
topic.
yeah. But you have two, right? You got It Cosmetics
And
it's kinda
Kiehl's.
skincare, and Kiehl's,
Yeah, and
right?
Kiehl's also.
Yeah. Let's tap a little bit more into this conversational part, which is the community, right? All these the audience you have. How do you use social media specifically to be inclusive? How do you make your social reflect that vision you guys have?
I think we sometimes take these like deep dives and look at like the feed, and of course also include story, but it's a bit easier looking at the feed and like, you know, who are we speaking to, like both like from the images and also to the captions. Like, are we actually reaching out to all different types of segments and ages and so on, and also just like taking a look at, you know, what is relevant for these different segments, like which trends are going on, are we tapping into those, and also of course, as we just talked about, like looking at the messages or the comments we get, and analyzing those.
Okay. Do you have a specific strategy when it comes to how you communicate with your audience through social media when it comes to this inclusivity?
Yes, I think we look at it as if we're equals. Like we would rather have you as like we're your friends. We're not supposed to like tell you what is right or wrong. We can tell you about the products, what we might think, you know, could be a fit, but we're not gonna talk, you know, over your head, or like, and if you're having a bad day and you're writing to us, we will ask like, why? Like, can we do anything to make it better? And I think that's what creates the difference, because it's not just like customer service. Like, we're not customer service. Like, we're there to, you know, to be there for our community.
That's
And
a good way of putting it. I don't think
Yeah.
I've heard that before.
And
actually.
I think like for me, Facebook might be more like customer service sometimes, because I think people use that in a much more like
Or Twitter.
precisely.
Twitter's the same way.
Yeah,
Like, they're more like,
precisely.
you know, you guys lost my luggage. I know you guys don't lose luggage because you're in beauty, but that's like that would be strange.
Yeah.
You guys lost my luggage. What? We didn't have anything to do with your luggage.
It could be package.
Yeah, it
package.
could be package.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. You guys lost. Where's my eyeliner? God damn it. That's what I always write.
My beard oil.
Yeah.
My beard oil. Yes. So, but yeah, I feel you. It's like, I think that's a really good sentiment, that we're here for the community. We're not customer service, and separating those two. I mean, or combining those two in some ways, or at least like having some section that says, okay, this is over to customer service. Oh, this is community. And
Precisely.
being able to manage those both.
And we also see, you know, that people also are looking more into also like entertainment, but also, you know, like humor.
Yeah.
And it might not, they might of course like want to know something about the product, but they also at the same
be
time would like a
entertained.
nice experience, or like, so sometimes we will be, you know, doing these posts that has nothing to do with like our products at all, just being like, what are you doing this Friday, or can you recommend a good movie for others to see, or other like funny pictures of animals or stuff, just like, because it should be more as a community and not just us being like this is the newest launch. Of course, we need to include that as well, but we also at some point were looking into we had this Facebook group for cosmetics. So we wanted to create this community. We didn't succeed in the way we wanted to, but we learned a lot in the process. Like, it's difficult just to like force this type of community, but we could see that after some time that the users started to engage with one another by themselves. It suddenly became like more like organic, but due to resources from our side, it's a lot to like, you know, have like ownership and like post on such a high like pace when you have this group. But it was very, very exciting to see that people also like, they want to meet one another. Of course, it could also be, you know, about the brand, about the products, but also just personal things.
Yeah. Yeah, we usually, this is a good point, because I think like a lot of brands follow that methodology of saying, okay, we want to have a community, so let's create a Facebook group. And that usually takes like a lot of work to get it going.
Does, time.
And what I usually advise customers, and this is good advice for you guys listening, is like, I think you should start without a group. I think you should start with like getting people together maybe in a live forum, like getting people together on maybe an Instagram Live or a Facebook Live, having them do that, having sort of a way of introducing people to one another, because that's the difference between like fans and a community. Like you can have a lot of people that really love your product, but the community part, like you mentioned, which is really important, is when people start to support each other, or when people start to know each other and can go to each other for advice. And usually that's not going to happen from the get-go, right? So if you start with the intention of that happening, it's probably harder to get started if you sort of say, okay, let's get people together in different ways and try to like soft launch this away and just do it over and over again, and then ask the community, hey, do you guys think that we should actually get you guys together so you can help each other out? And then maybe that's also in a DM group beforehand, or it's in a, you know, another fashion than just something that you guys have to really like put a lot of resources in.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, for those of you listening at home, I think it's a good learning, it's a good lesson to sort of say, okay, how do we do this in a way that's less resource intensive? And that usually could be, you know, Instagram Lives, Facebook Lives, to get those people together. Tell them when you're going to come together. Get them to ask questions in those live forums. Introduce each other. Hey, you know, does anybody know somebody who can help Sally with her question, or help John with his question? And then you can actually manage lives that way, and it organically comes together.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. And I think the realization for us also came to like, okay, so we're actually doing our Instagram quite well. Like, maybe we shouldn't be playing on that many horses, because it's difficult. We have this amount of, you know, resources and time. And so we chose also not to do it. But I completely agree that there could be other ways of like getting people together and that
engage
a group,
the community.
And engaging a community.
But it's totally tough. I mean, I've done that same thing. I'm like, I'm gonna make a group, and we're gonna come together. And it's like, holy crap, this is a lot of work.
Precisely.
So I think it's like, it's trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this with least path of resistance?
Yeah, so you can just kind of facilitate in the beginning, and then you can withdraw yourself a little bit more.
And that was what we also like. That was our goal that we wanted to do.
It's a good goal.
Yeah.
And also for especially a brand like cosmetics, where like we have this quote like, beautiful without it and beautiful with it.
Oh, that's cool.
And we do see that a lot of these women, like we see it in the in our comments. We see it when we have different types of events and people meet, that it's a lot of these women who have that in common. They don't really feel seen, and they might not have the biggest knowledge about makeup, but they would like something that works, and something, you know, maybe like a brand that talks to them at eye level and also uses some models that look like them.
So it's more relatable.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And I think that is like great, and that was what we saw the potential in, and thought, hey, let's create this Facebook group, best idea ever. And then we were like, okay, like now we're forcing it a bit. Maybe we should have started with more lives, more like events, something else.
You never know until you
Yeah.
Precise.
Probably
Trial and
shouldn't
error.
start
I mean,
doing it,
it's
right?
it's
But people were like, it was so funny because we also like asked people like, who are you? Tell more about yourself.
Yeah.
And then we saw people engage quite a lot.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's
so
perfect. That's what you want.
yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it also speaks to certain segments, and then I just want to know: do you ever draw a line between the communication? When is it okay to make it maybe be a more segmented in your communication on social media, or do you ever draw that line even, or is it always have to be inclusive?
I think going back to the local campaign we did here in the Nordics, we had a minor shitstorm. And it arose by us wanting to create, this campaign that, and it was both like in the Nordics, but also it was like a global campaign. So the different countries would make their own, but it was called like Real Women. And in cosmetics, we are inclusive. Like we use all types of like people in our advertising. But for that specific campaign, we were like, okay, we wanted to find like mothers, we wanted to find like daughters or with specific skin concerns. So that was what we, wrote in this post when we were searching for these women. Like, hey, we're looking for like 4 or 7 amazing, women here in the Nordics. Like, please apply. And then suddenly, and it always happens in the weekends, right? Like when you're like, and I'm
off.
like, somebody will deal with it. I'm like, oh no, that's my job. And I'm like, oh damn it. Yeah. And then I started seeing some like a person commenting like, so like, are you not inclusive? Like, are men not allowed? And we were like, and I need to think about that. And it was like 10 o'clock, and I couldn't. I needed to like ask somebody higher up. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna wait until the morning. But then I got to see these like stories, like and like comments, and it started to like escalate a bit. So I asked our external communication director about how to like deal with this, and she was like, maybe just change it to, instead of like you're looking for women, you're looking for people, because I guess you can
Filter out.
and like use actually men in this campaign. And then we were like, yeah, okay, that's true. Like the person who wrote might have a point that like if we are an inclusive brand, like why are we not like including everyone? So we were like, okay, and it started to escalate. So we were like, we will try to solve this. Then we changed this caption to be, we were searching for real people. But that didn't end there, because then we had changed it, but we were of course a bit too slow, and then it was because we were forced to, and then there was still some conversation after. But then when we saw all the applicants, we saw that there was only one person or one guy who had applied, and that was that person who had escalated the whole deal. And then we were like, and here it becomes troublesome, because should we then discriminate like the 100 or how many, it was like 150 women who had applied, or should, for choosing that one guy just because he was a guy? And I think that sometimes can become very, very blurry, because we were like, is that fair for all the other women?
Right.
But again, we are inclusive, so why shouldn't we choose that one guy? And it was such a huge dilemma. But then we went back and we were like, we're looking for women with specific skin concerns. It should be after that, or like, and yes, another campaign, it could have been totally relevant to include the guy, because also, for instance, our shade finders, we include men in those. When you're looking at our product descriptions and like finding your shades. But for this campaign, we were like, we need to stick with it. Like, it's not fair. Like, of course, if we had like a same amount of men, then things would have been differently. So we actually chose to say,
only go with women.
Only women this time.
I think you made the right choice.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, because I think like I don't know, it's such a dilemma that us marketers face nowadays, and I think there's not a lot of discussion about it, which I'm glad you're like bringing it up, is that if a product is pretty much meant for a certain gender, or let's say an age group, like we wouldn't say, hey, like we're gonna do a advertisement for Disneyland, but we don't want to include children. Like you'd be like, wait a second, this doesn't make any sense. Like the product is clearly for children and families, but then like if then people in the 80 plus category were like, we're not represented. What is going on here? Like we really want to be represented in this. No, we want real families or real children to come and do this ad. And I think like that is okay. And I think like brands, I think we'll get to a place where brands start to maybe, realize that they can be inclusive in some areas, but they also have to be realistic with our marketing efforts and be like, listen, this campaign is specifically for women or specifically for gay men or specifically for gay women or specifically for this gender or this, and that's okay. Like, we need to be able to do that. Yeah. That's just how it is. Like, there's product that are specifically for vegetarians. There's products that are specifically for meat eaters. Like, we got to kind of get out of crazy zone here. And
I think it's more about when you look at it holistically, then the brand is inclusive, but we still have these kind of sub campaigns that's targeted to certain segments. But that doesn't mean that the whole brand is just not inclusive. Because when you communicate to everyone, you communicate to no one.
Yeah,
precisely.
So you have to sort of tailor it to that group, right? So, but it's tough.
It's a gray
zone.
It
It's going to be a gray zone for I think the next 10, 15 years until
it is, and also due to these like shitstorms. Like, how do you deal with that? One thing is that you're trying to like communicate, but you're more or less communicating to an audience who already like took their stance and chose sides and are already like disliking us for something maybe they didn't really research on. And I think that's that's
just the internet.
Yeah, that's the internet.
That's the internet.
Amazing,
social media gives
precisely the amazing thing, but also the curse about social media is that information is so easy to get, or bits and bytes. It's also easy to get in-depth information, and I just wish sometimes before these like internet warriors, before they started like their echo chambers of like, let's just cancel culture, like that sometimes they just took a step back and like, of course there's a lot of feelings involved, and like it does make sense that you are frustrated or you're like really sad about the situation, but like please then do your job or like your study or like read then about the subject, and then you can come back and be like okay, because we started getting these like really really like people were like so mad, like you're not inclusive and like you're the worst brand ever, and like and there I was like,
there's a lot of great things that you guys are doing, like
and then I was like, did you even see or like our last campaign where it was like men only or
but social media rewards this type of behavior, right? And it's kind of sad, right? It's also like, I really think that most of these comments or most of these things, there's a frustrated and angry person behind that, and that's where it's good in a sense that we can sort of see it come out, and then we can deal with it as a society from a mental health perspective or from a support perspective. So in that sense is good, but it is like, that's I think the worst thing about social. It just rewards
precisely
as inspiring
behavior.
as it can be, as toxic it can also be, right?
Yeah.
Do you guys have any tips for the marketeers out there who's just really trying to do their best on social media and communicating with the community?
Chris, you take that.
Crap.
You don't have to say, just a few tips.
Like when
maybe.
it comes to inclusivity?
Yeah, and like how do you handle this negativity about inclusive?
That's a good one. I think that
for a brand, or the community managers out there.
I think that if you're working with a brand or you're working in a brand and you're working with a social, I think you have to like first give yourself a little bit of a pass, because social media is tough. It's a very tough job, and I think people are just waking up to the fact that it is a tough job and that there is all of these considerations beyond just like creating a nice piece of content. You're talking about strategy and community management and paid media on top of that, and inclusivity, and there's a lot of facets to it that have to be taken in. And I think you've got a perfect example there where you're trying to do a very nice piece of content and campaign, and you're inviting some people, and it kind of blows up. And it's usually, the minority of people, like a small amount of people, that are actually causing the most, noise. And I think you just have to realize that as a marketing manager, and realize that there's no mistake that could be so great that takes out a company or destroys a company or destroys a campaign. Like, it's not.
I'm sure about that.
Yeah, it's not going to be that bad. Like, listen,
Shirley
honestly,
has a different
yeah,
example.
but this is why we have crisis communications, and I think that's also why, you see this. I mean, you've seen tons of brands, sort of like H&M, for example. They had an issue with a T-shirt a few years ago, and like, these things pop up. Is H&M still around? Yes. Are they doing fine? Yes. Pepsi also had this issue. Are they doing okay? Yes, absolutely. So I think you just have to realize that tomorrow is a new day, and you will get through this, and just try your best to include people and also do the best thing for your products and your brand. And I think that if you lead with that intention, you lead with that heart, then you can't really go wrong. So yeah, that's my advice. If that is that advice, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was great
I think it's a good
advice.
advice.
Yeah, I really agree on what you're saying, and I think also that, like, to sum that up, but also something that like should be seen, in the full company, and not just due to a specific trend right now going on. And for instance, also on the brand that I work on, Kiehl's, we've always supported the LGBTQ plus community. For like several years, and also like Pride and I think for some, like, I'm not saying pointing fingers, but I think for some companies, they just like, oh, okay, now it's Pride Month, let's see what we can advertise about that. And I do understand that some people might get a bit offended, like, okay, where are you the rest of the year where we need the support? And for instance, on Kiehl's, I really, really like, how would you say it? Like, I'm really, really happy to be working on a brand that is actually also doing a difference. Like, I know that I might sound like a bit like biased, but I really do mean when I say that these brands that I've been working with, also like Urban Decay, like, they were the front runners of showing like two women, almost like kissing in advertising, or men using makeup. Like, it is the core of the brand. And I'm not to say that like new brands, or like brands who are wanting to become more inclusive cannot do so, but I'm just saying that it's easy just to do parts of it and then use that for advertising. And if you really want to do a difference, it needs to be shown on several levels.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I don't think that was advice, but I think that was just like my view, that if you want to be inclusive, do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's the same with us as a company. I mean, we don't think about it so much. Like, we're not sitting creating like pride campaigns for Cubco. Like, we have a number of people from those communities, and like, it's not an issue anymore. It's like inclusivity is just in our blood.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like something that we need to particularly
I think that
advertise
is
about
great.
and like
Yeah.
make anything about, because it's just who we are.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I think a lot of companies will get there. And I think we're a new age company in the sense, like, we've only been built in the last 6 years. So we have been growing up in that. But, the older companies that have been around for many
It is
years.
not a given for every company.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
So it is coming for them, and it will be. But, and you'll see that over the next, I think, 20, 30 years, that it's just a natural progression, right? And
Precisely.
It's not even a topic anymore. So
Yeah.
No.
But I agree. Yeah, good points.
So thank you guys so much for sharing your advice and your experience.
So
I'm
welcome.
going to do a little summary for our audience here. When I asked how L'Oreal brands is being more socially responsible as a whole, the line between beauty and authenticity in social is swinging towards the imperfect. So we actually have to acknowledge that, especially through within the paid media space, it's really hard to find a balance between inclusivity and then targeted segments. But you can start by asking yourself, is it supposed to be for everyone? And second, you can try to show the range of products and representation that you have within your brands. And when it comes to the communication strategies on social, L'Oreal tries to reflect on whether you're tapping into the relevant trends and conversations that are relatable to the community. So your advice, Shirley's advice, is to look at your audience as equals and not talk over their heads on social. And you are not providing customer service. It's a community. You're here for the community. Whatever activity you have on campaigns or initiatives, just make sure that you put enough resources to it, or at least have tactics that can limit resource heavy tasks. And then their advice on how you as a brand manager can handle and manage negativity on social media: give yourself a pass. Social is hard and there's a lot of different facets. As a marketing manager, Chris said that you can never destroy a brand or a campaign. Tomorrow is a
I don't know how true that is, but,
yeah, but let's.
I haven't seen a brand be destroyed yet.
Tomorrow is always a new day. Do your best for your product, as Shirley said, and follow your heart, and it will bring out the best intentions you have. And then, of course, it's the more important to. It is very important to be consistent with your inclusivity. You have to live it in order to make it come to life and become a part of your brand's DNA. So here we have it, guys. Wow. Subscribe, leave your thoughts, your feedback, likes and dislikes with us, and thank you for listening. And stay tuned for the next one.
See ya.
Thank you. Bye.
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 This has been the Social Media Sucks Podcast.